Hello Booktube, welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan. I am Just One Reader, your favorite Mexican booktuber who reads in English, and today I would like to discuss The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This video, by the way, of course as always, will contain no spoilers whatsoever, so feel free to watch comfortably just to see if this book sounds like a good fit for you or not. What is it about? Well, in a nutshell, without giving anything away in terms of the plot and the intricacies of the story and how it unfolds, The Last House on Needless Street follows Ted. Ted is an adult man who very clearly, and I really mean that very clearly, from page 1 we can see that he suffers from mental illness. Like there's something, he's severely unwell. This is very evident to the reader. We follow him as he lives his life in this very isolated, depressive, creepy kind of way in this house, the titular house on Needless Street, which is boarded up and very, very sinister. So we follow that kind of life, that slice of life plot of the novel, but then we also have this kind of secondary plot that is really also integral to Ted's story, which is about this girl who disappeared and was probably kidnapped and or killed some years ago, and we follow this girl's sister as she sort of continues the investigation, you know, trying to find her or at least have some kind of closure, which is a typical trope that I think many of us have seen both in literature, in movies, in different kinds of media. So without giving anything away, that's what the book sort of follows at the beginning. The book is told through different POVs, different points of view. Each chapter is told by a different character, usually in the first person, although not always. We follow Ted, we follow his cat. There's a talking, sentient cat that has a POV in this book because, you know, that's a thing, because that's a thing. We also have another character whose name is Lauren, and we have the girl, the sister of the missing girl. And I think those are all the POVs. That's it. That's all I'm going to say in terms of the plot. Now, why did I personally read this book? Well, people told me this book was really unique, really interesting, really smart and clever, and like one of those books where the plot twist is so incredibly well delivered that you never saw it coming, but it completely makes sense, and it's, you know, it has that kind of wow factor. So I was really excited to pick this book up. This is, you know, a psychological thriller, which I love. There's a mystery to it. It's not exactly a horror novel. If you are looking for something really in the horror genre, this is not horror. But if you are a little wary about horror or a little squirmish, I think you could handle this. There's not a lot of, well, I don't know. Take that with a grain of salt. I was gonna say there's not a lot of terrifying things going on in this book, but well, mental illness, you know, anyway. So, what did I like about this book and what did I dislike about this book? Well, first the positives, because I am such a positive person, right? Okay, so what I really liked about this book was the beginning. I really liked the first half of the book, or maybe the first 2/3 of the book. I loved the atmosphere. It was so confusing, which is deliberate, of course. I really liked the POVs, even though that, you know, it took me a while to get into that kind of groove. But once I got into it, I really liked reading each POV. I also really liked the kind of abstract mental discourse way in which the book is written. It feels very much like you're following someone's thought, someone's thinking, like train of thought, like the way that people sort of talk to themselves, that kind of discourse. So I really liked that. I also really appreciated that this novel was very straightforward in terms of the writing without feeling cheaply written, but also, you know, well executed in terms of the prose. I thought it was pretty okay, pretty readable. It was pretty bingeable. I wanted to know more. I wanted to keep reading just to see what would happen and how things would be solved at the end. I was also, I knew going in that this book had a lot of plot twists ahead, so I really was expecting to see what would happen. Unfortunately, those are the only positive things that I can say about this book, because the rest was kind of incredibly disappointing. And not only was it disappointing, but also it kind of contaminated the positive things that I had seen in the book, which is, it's kind of a weird feeling. But I did end up giving this book not a very nice rating, because this is just one of those instances where I really firmly believe that the bad outweighed the good, which is, it sucks, but that's just the way that I personally felt about this book. That doesn't mean to say that you will feel the same way that I did, but it certainly was a letdown for me. Okay, so without giving anything away, because this is a book that you don't want spoiled for you in any way, although I think it's very hard to spoil, but anyway, I will say that what I felt very disappointed by was the twists, the solution to the mystery, the way that things unfolded and the things that were revealed, I found incredibly predictable. Like, I figured everything out from the opening chapter of the book. That's not to say that I am some kind of weird literary genius or like some kind of Sherlock Holmes of the genre. No. It just means to say that if you think about it a little, you will get there. You will figure things out. And there's really no twist. I think it's pretty evident from the very first chapter or couple of chapters what is really going on. I think it's incredibly obvious, like so much so that I was like, no, is this really what the story is about? Is this really what's going on? No, you gotta be kidding me. No, that's what it was. That's exactly what it was. So I was left feeling very, it was just not a satisfying way of ending a book that should feel like very surprising and very, plot twisty and, like, wow. No, that's not the way that I personally felt. So I didn't like that. And look, I have to say, this might be a personal thing because I am a psychoanalyst. This is what I do for a living every day. This is what I've been trained to do, which is, finding those kinds of clues and those kinds of connections, trying to dig deeper and deeper and deeper when listening, or in this case, reading some kind of mental discourse. That's what I've been trained to do as a psychoanalyst and psychotherapist, try to make connections and make inferences. And, it's just a way of thinking that I've been trained to do. And I don't know if that's partly why I just saw right through this book, or maybe it was just incredibly obvious and clear and evident, regardless of, if I'm a psychoanalyst or not. So that's what I mainly did not like about the book. Oh, by the way, talking about psychotherapists, there's a therapist character in this novel, which I really, really, really hated, but I loved reading about him because he's just one of those severely incompetent therapists, and I was cringing so hard when I was reading those chapters with him and those sessions of therapy. The worst therapist in the world. I always take it very seriously whenever I see therapy or therapists portrayed in books or TV shows or movies or any kind of media, because it's something that it just kind of, it irks me and makes me cringe so hardly. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed those scenes. The worst therapist ever in this book. And lastly, I will say that there's something in the resolution of this book, the way that things end. I didn't like the ending. I thought it was saccharine sweet. I thought it was incredibly sentimental, which, I have a strong distaste for sentimentality in books or in any kind of media. If it comes out of nowhere and if it feels wrong, it's because it is wrong. And in this instance, I did feel it was wrong. I did feel it came from out of nowhere, and it felt like manipulative and just simplistic and frankly silly. That doesn't mean to say that the book itself is manipulative or silly, although maybe a little bit, you know what I mean? So in the end, I did feel that the book, I do think this book is recommendable if you want something light and entertaining and fun, kind of confusing, but at the same time pretty straightforward and easy to follow. Just something to read over the weekend or in a couple of sittings. This is fine. It's not the worst book I've read in my life, but I personally didn't like it because it was very obvious all along what was going on. So for me, there was no surprise, there was no revelation. Also, I felt it was manipulative and kind of saccharine, sweet, sentimental, especially the ending. Also, this book maybe has some good intentions, but I did feel that the author was using mental illness in different characters way too much as a gimmick. And look, I am a mental health specialist, and it did sort of rub me in the wrong way. Like, mental illness is very fun and entertaining to read about. I mean, the horror genre, the psychological thrillers, of course, we enjoy reading about mental issues. But here, it did feel a little gimmicky, and yeah, just like it was used too much. It sort of rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like the way that it sort of romanticized and simplified mental illness, and I didn't like that very much. Anyway, this book was a 2.5-star book for me. Not the worst book, not a great book. What did you think? Have you read it? Will you read it? Will you consider it? The Last House on Needless Street. Thanks for watching.